Buenos tardes. Today we're going to talk about the project budget. By the way, I thought I would show my desktop as something that might be familiar to most of you, at least those of you in Tijuana. Well, we've talked about a number of tools. We started with the problem statement, which is maybe not quite a tool, but certainly an approach to beginning a project. We talked about the project charter. We talked about the work breakdown structure, the RAM chart, the network diagram, and then last week the Gantt chart. The project budget is not a tool in the same way that these others are. While Gantt charts may vary somewhat from one organization to another, or network diagrams, they are more or less standard. There are certain features that define them. A project budget, on the other hand, varies so widely from one organization to another that it's difficult to say anything that's true in all situations. So we're going to talk about how we're going to do budgeting here, recognizing that it may be quite different than how you do it in your organization or many other organizations might do it. But I think once you understand the basic principles, you can apply them in a wide variety of settings. Well, the basis for project management, as we talked about at the very beginning, is the triple constraints: time, cost, and scope. And all projects are subject to these three constraints. We've talked a lot about time. First of all, beginning with the problem statement, we had a time frame within which the problem was to be solved. In the project charter, we talked about completion dates or deadlines, durations for the entire project. When we got into talking about the work breakdown structure, here we're talking primarily about scope, not so much about time. But the project charter also deals with project scope. So we've dealt with time and scope in most of the tools that we've talked about. We have not talked too much about the concept of cost. The first time we mentioned it may have been in the problem statement. Again, depending on the nature of the problem. But certainly we talked about cost when it got to the project charter, because no one's going to sign a project charter without knowing what the project is going to cost, or at least having a good estimate as to what the project is going to cost. Some project charter templates, including the one that we used for this course, may even require a high-level project budget as a part of the project charter. So the project charter is approved, and the project manager then is authorized to spend up to the amount of money that is authorized in the project charter. But that's not to say exactly how that money is to be spent. Remember, there's a difference between a budget and a cost estimate. A cost estimate is a number, although it may be expressed as a range. And in fact, I would certainly recommend that you do that, rather than simply coming up with a point estimate as to what the project is going to cost. Come up with some kind of range, because you never know what's going to happen, and that range gives you a little bit of leeway in terms of your estimate. The work breakdown structure is going to be very helpful in refining that estimate, because the estimate based on the project charter is going to be very speculative. As we don't know a lot of detail, we only have high-level information about the project. So once we've done the work breakdown structure, now we have much more detailed information about the scope of the project. That is, we know what work needs to be done in order to accomplish the goals and objectives of the project. That is, the work packages. But also, it's easier to estimate small things than it is big things. And work packages are much smaller than the project as a whole, and hence we can come up with more accurate estimates of work packages than we can of the whole project. So what we can do is we can add up the cost, that is our estimate of the cost of all of the work packages, and that should give us a good estimate of the total cost of the project. That's of course assuming that we have a complete work breakdown structure. If you leave things out of the work breakdown structure, then of course they won't be factored into the total cost of the project and will underestimate the cost. Now remember, when we add up the costs, we're adding up the cost of the work packages, not the sub-projects. We don't estimate the cost of sub-projects any more than we schedule them. What we do is, if we want to know what the cost of a sub-project is, we simply add up the work packages within that particular sub-project. And that gives us the ability to report costs at the work package level, or at multiple sub-project levels, or at the level of the project as a whole. So, how do we actually come up with those estimates? Well, there's a number of different ways in which we can do that. First, let's look at where the sources of cost for a project come. Basically, a listing of resource costs. In Figure 4.7, this is from the supplemental reading, you can see that there's quite a few different components to a cost estimate. Labor is the most obvious, and for some of your projects it's going to be by and far the largest component. But those of you who are in manufacturing may find that equipment is also a major cost of your project. In construction, materials and supplies are often major costs. Facilities, permits, fees, travel. Those are all things that from time to time can become an important component of the cost of the work package. Remember, at this point, we're not concerned with the cost of the project. We're focusing on estimating the costs of each individual work package, which will then add up to come to a total cost for the project. Adjustments for inflation. Generally, unless you have a 3 to 5 year project, it's not worth factoring this into your estimates. Currency fluctuations, again, unless you're dealing with projects that are overseas, currency inflations won't be an issue. Now, I know many of you work for U.S. companies and deal with both pesos and dollars. Again, currency fluctuations are probably not an issue unless the project is a long-term project. And then the cost of contingency plans. We know that sometimes things go wrong, and sometimes organizations will set aside a certain amount of money to deal with issues that need to be dealt with, emergencies usually. Maybe workarounds. I was involved with a project recently. It was about a $6 million project, and we set aside about $600,000 in contingency money, and fortunately only had to use about $85,000 of it. But it was nice to know that that money was there, so that if something did go wrong, we had the ability to deal with it. Unfortunately, most organizations do not have any contingency plans and therefore don't budget for contingencies. And so when things go wrong, they have to, at the last minute, in emergency mode, try to figure out what to do. But in any case, these are the major sources of project costs. Now, let's take a look at what an example. But before we do that, let's talk a little bit about how we estimate. Maybe labor is the major source of cost for our project. How do we do that? Well, what we have to do is we have to estimate how many man hours or man months, depending on how you measure them, and what's the average cost of a unit of labor. So, for example, if you need 24 hours for this particular work package at, say, $75 per hour, then you're looking at 24 times 75, and that's your estimate for the labor for that particular work package. You can also go back and look at previous records. Uh, many of these work packages are not unique. Some work packages appear in project after project. You can go back and look how many man hours did it take last time we did this particular work package. We can talk to industry experts. Some trade associations have standards for man hours for accomplishing certain types of work. So there's a wide variety of ways that we can do this. The next question becomes, once we have come up with an estimate of the cost of each work package, how do we report that? How do we communicate that to the members of the team and to senior management? Well, that's where we get back to Excel again. And let me show you. This is the example that I uploaded, I believe, yesterday. To show you how this might look. Now, I've had some reservations about uploading examples in previous weeks, simply because what I found is that people tend to copy it, and in so doing, they incorporate the mistakes of the sample into their own work rather than analyzing it. This particular spreadsheet is good, but it contains some features that are not necessary, and it contains some features that are simply incorrect. So I don't know how much time I'm going to spend talking about some of these, but let's make this a little bit bigger so we can see it. The one thing that you'll notice here is that on the left-hand side, we have the work breakdown structure. In fact, it looks very similar to the responsibility assignment matrix assignment that we had several years ago. And so what we're going to do then is we'll estimate the cost based on what we've just talked about for each individual work package. Now in this particular example, he's broken that out by project manager, QC supervisor, hardware engineering. That's nice, but it's not a requirement. And the thing that I've found is that sometimes you can have too much detail. Some people might like to see this broken out in this way. But in working with senior managers, what I found is they want to cut to the chase. Just give me the important stuff and let's not worry about the details. So basically what they want to do is they want to look at this column over here, total labor cost, and dispense with all the information in between. Okay? Basically their concern is, are we within budget or not? And are we going to be able to stay within budget and not worry about all the details? Okay, so make sure that you have your complete work breakdown structure. I know that many of you left out the work breakdown structure in your Gantt chart, and I'm not quite sure why that was, but the ability to be able to show progress and at different levels is extremely important, just as it's important here to be able to show costs, not just for each individual work package, but we can look at the total cost of the project, and we can also look at the cost of system design, 1.2, or hardware procurement, 1.3. So you can see those are all broken down here. So we can look at it at the work package level, the sub-project level, or we can look at it at the project level. And different people are going to have different interests. At a very high level, they may not even care about the sub-projects. They just want to know what's the total cost of the project. As a project manager, I'm more interested in a little bit more detail. But by using the work breakdown structure, it gives us the option of looking at it at different levels. One of the problems with this is that it assumes that all costs are labor costs. And in fact, that's not correct. Now, for this particular project, that may be the vast majority, but it's not the only one. Now, again, you can separate these out by labor costs, by materials, if you like. Again, that detail is really not necessary as long as you can come up with a good total cost. I recall in reading through the project charters that some of you did not include a budget, and in your and some of you did, but did not include labor costs because the people who are going to participate in the project, that is, those assigned to the project, were salaried employees. That is, they're going to be paid whether they're working on project X or project Y or not, no project at all. Okay? They get a paycheck every month regardless of what they do. By approaching the project in that way, you're looking at labor as an overhead item as opposed to a direct cost to the project. Now, I've worked with a lot of organizations that do that. They just simply do not count labor into the cost of the project since they have that expense whether they do the project or not. And there is a certain logic to that, but I think it's a mistake to do it. And the reason why I think so is this. Labor is not free. Regardless of how you pay for it, it is a cost to the project. And if you don't capture that cost, you really don't know what the true cost of the project is. And when you start comparing projects, or when you try to do a cost-benefit analysis, the cost-benefit analysis may not come up with the right answer simply because labor costs are not factored in. It causes people to think that projects are less expensive than in fact they actually are. And if you want to measure the benefits of a particular project against the costs, then you're going to have to do it against all costs and not just the materials and the facilities and the equipment and so forth. You have to include labor costs in there as well. So this is basically what we're going to do for the project budget. If you have any questions, use the blog. Some of you are using it, most of you aren't, but it's a good place to float ideas, to try to get feedback from some of your classmates. And I try to check that at least once a day, and respond to questions that are posed there or ideas that people have floated. So do take advantage of that resource, and I'm looking forward to getting some good project budgets by Sunday night. So good luck, buenas suertes, and we'll see you later.